Hello everyone. I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about how I went about writing Oni Whispers in the Snuff Box. So first things first, this is what I call an art book. And what that means is it is one of the publications that Brian Thompson and I of Cloud Orchid Publishing have put together, where it combines my writing and my artwork with Brian's photography. Frequently in these books, we utilize my short stories and my poetry in order to put together a full narrative. These are experimental, non-traditional books that create a full narrative experience. And what that means is, yes, they are books with pictures, but the pictures are very experimental in nature, with the way that the photography is presented, with the way the layout is presented, our choice of fonts. It is essentially more of an art piece than it is a traditional book. And for Oni Whispers in the Snuff Box, I do want to say that this is one of my crown jewels of my works that I have completed and published. This was an enormous project, and I am so incredibly proud of it, y'all. So, how this book got started was with our adventures to OSR, the Ohio State Reformatory. And if y'all go in the description below, you will see a link to the video, How Bryan and I Met. I go into far more detail about our adventures at OSR and the other abandoned and historical locations that we enjoy going to if you want more information on that. But this book was grown out of our adventures at OSR, and we eventually actually did the photo shoot at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. We went with a large crew of people, about 30 people, several cars, and 2 trailers. It was a massive undertaking, y'all, and for the particular photo shoot that we did for Oni Whispers in the Snuff Box, I was the creative director and the chief stylist. Brian was the photographer, and then the models were Ophelia Darkley and Andorra both. And for this concept, it was my concept. I envisioned everything, and I told everyone down to the last detail exactly what I wanted this to be. So Brian and I do have collaborative efforts where we both combine our ideas, and we also have our projects where this is purely 100% my project and Brian is just one of the working pieces. And then there are also projects that are purely Brian's project and I am just one of the working pieces. So we do have different projects that have those different elements to them, and this project was definitely my baby, and everyone there was just there to fulfill creating this idea. And what that means is that I had a vision and everybody helped me create that vision, and I didn't have input from anybody else on that vision. It was purely my vision. And what that vision was is this idea of, traditionally in insane asylums, a lot of women were sent away, not even for having any sort of mental incapacities. A lot of times, unfortunately, it was because their husbands got bored of them, because they had a disagreement with their husband and their husband didn't want to put up with them, or because their wife couldn't have kids, or because they wanted to trade in for a new model, like insert here. It was basically, it had a lot to do with the fact that women just really had no rights, and their husbands could just literally throw them away if they chose to do so. For a historical reference, a lot of times this is also called bedlam. Bedlam refers to sending away your wife to an insane asylum to basically be abused and experience horrific nightmares until she dies. Unfortunately, that is a reality of our history and of European history, and it's awful, but it's true. And I have several pieces that explore exactly that concept, but Oni Whispers in the Snuff Box really pushes the envelope on just how far into the darkness can we go with this. And so specifically, this is about a main character who has already been in this asylum for a long time. And it's as the old saying goes, if you're not crazy when you come here, you're sure You're going to be crazy by the time you leave. And by leave, we mean die, because nobody leaves. And she's at the point where she has lost her mind. And we show that with the idea of the Oni. So traditionally, an Oni is a part of Japanese folklore. It is a demon, and they typically have red faces and horns, and they look very like troll-like, to give you an idea. And I use this term very loosely. This creature is not based on any sort of accurate Japanese folklore at all. I just wanted to create this very stark, very frightening creature that the main character is being haunted by, and it makes the reader question, is this real? Is this an actual demon that's actually haunting her? Is this a hallucination of her imagination from being in this place for so long? You're not quite sure. And I'll tell y'all, I'm not going to tell you. That is for you to decide while you read this very disturbing, very scary story. And yes, this book is meant to be disturbing and scary. And I always tell people up front whenever I'm at conventions and they take a look at this book, this is not for the faint-hearted, just so you know. This is a scary book, because it is. It's scary on a lot of levels. The visual imagery is scary. The story is scary. The way that Bryan put together the formatting, which, oh my goodness, Bryan is just a genius at artistic formatting, y'all, is just so off-putting and just makes you so uncomfortable as you flip through the book, which is just masterful, and I love it. And I just wanted to really capture those creepy feelings, and I also did that by, as we go through the story, I also threaded in that very old song which was used in the movie Hocus Pocus, Come Little Children. It actually wasn't originally written for that movie. It's an older song that I couldn't find the origins for, but it was utilized in the movie because it is this really old folk song that has been used for a lot of other movies and artistic formats as well. So I wove that song throughout the story just to add to that creepy element and just to really make this narrative as off-putting as possible. In terms of the photography, we were at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, specifically in the main building. There are 5 buildings as a part of the Lunatic Asylum, and specifically the women's wing is actually burnt down. I do have a video on my modeling channel where it shows us walking through there, and it's just, everything is just burnt on the inside. It's really trippy walking through it. But we were in the main building where a lot of it was still very much intact, but as one of our favorite elements of crumbling historical buildings is it had all of the lead paint coming off in ribbons on the wall. That is always just so off-putting and just such a cool texture to have in photos. And because these were living quarters, these were places where people lived. They spent the rest of their lives in them. They also had bathrooms. So in true artistic photography fashion, we had a lot of the photos around this toilet. And it was just so gross and just so weird and just so like in the middle of the room. And it just added just this air of just grossness and off-puttingness. And that was actually Bryan's choice, to have us specifically in that part of the room for most of the photos. And I think that it was a brilliant addition to my personal vision. And Ophelia played the role of the main character, the woman who has been locked in this asylum. And so that I didn't damage her hair, I actually brought with an old wig that I was going to throw away anyway. It was an old black wig. And I just backcombed it and made it even worse, even grosser, even more tangled, even more messed up. And then I actually used makeup to make her look dirty. And that's the biggest thing, is that you don't have to actually rub dirt all over yourself or all over your models to make them look dirty, you can totally use makeup to make them look dirty, and it's just far more sanitary. And I just really recommend, please use makeup to make someone look dirty. Don't use dirt, because that is gross, and you're probably gonna at best give somebody a skin rash, at worst like yucky infections. And yeah, let's not go down the road. But yeah, I made her look dirty using makeup, and I put dark circles under her eyes, just the whole 9 yards. And I dressed her all in white, because even though a lot of insane asylums didn't necessarily dress patients all in white, a lot of them used just whatever they had on hand that was easy to wash. A lot of it was really dingy and discolored. I used that because I wanted the stark contrast so that she just really pops in the scene, which is also why I had Andorra both styled to have the full white face of makeup, was that I just wanted them both to really pop in the images and for them to just look as startling as possible. So that's a big part of the reason why, even though it's titled Oni, that this ghastly creature has a white face instead of a red face, is just because it's just so much more startling with the backgrounds than a red face would have been. But I did dress Andorra both in, this isn't even clothes, it's, I literally bought all different kinds of red ribbon at the craft store. So anything from very, very thin red ribbon to red ribbon that was literally like this wide. Like, it was very broad red ribbon that you would usually use to decorate, like, you know, banisters for Christmas, or just, you know, creating very large bows for clothing sashes, just, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it was just really, really broad ribbon. And I utilized all of that, and I actually tied it around Andorra both in a way to kind of create a garment, but it is definitely not a garment. And once we were done with the shoot, I just took scissors and cut them out of it, because it's not clothes. I did have a lot of people ask me about that. They're like, oh, who designed that outfit? It's not an outfit. I just tied a bunch of ribbons on Andorra both. And the biggest thing that I wanted to create was the ribbons that I put on Andorra both's arms, in that I took all these ribbons and I like spaced them out along their arm where they're hanging down. And in some of the pictures when they have their arms out, it looks like these weird, like, bloody wings almost. And that was done on purpose. That was a big part of my vision, was that I just wanted to create a creature that was just so unsettling and so weird, and just have no explanation behind why it's like this. Because whether it's you're being haunted by actual demons, or it's just something out of your nightmarish imagination, a lot of times their appearance is just no explanation for why this is. It's just really hideous and really off-putting and really scary. And that was exactly what I wanted to accomplish with this. So with all of that, that was all of the actual vision behind this project, in creating these photos and having the Oni tormenting this mental patient. And Ophelia and Andorra both did a beautiful job of bringing that to life, in just Andorra both being amazingly scary and off-putting and haunting, and Ophelia just looking like a person who has just been broken by every sense of the word. Just their mind is broken, their spirit is broken, just there is no hope, there is only desperation, and there is no escape. And they just both did an absolutely amazing job bringing that part of my vision to life. And of course, Bryan, with all of his expertise with photography and helping them to pose in order to get the composition put together, and then the way that he does lighting and the different tools that he uses with his photography equipment, just really brought all of this together. And it was just so impressive, y'all. And I do have a lot of behind the scenes footage of that, again, on my modeling YouTube channel from when we actually shot that. So just absolutely beautiful. I have it in the description if y'all want to check that out. Again, just want to put a warning out there, definitely not for the faint of heart, and definitely not for underage people. So yeah, watch at your own discretion. Now, the story element of it is definitely based on some of the actual real stories of female patients that were thrown away by family or husbands or society into insane asylums. So the elements of how the main character is treated and what she is experiencing is based very much off of historical information on how a lot of these patients experienced life in these asylums. And at the end, she is lobotomized, which was a very common practice in these asylums, and it was specifically used for obedience. The main goal of lobotomizing a patient was to make it easier to deal with them. It had nothing to do with actually curing anything. It just was about complacency, that they were quiet, that they were docile, and it was easy to get them to do things that you wanted them to do, whether it's sitting and being quiet, just sitting and eating their food, just behaving, whatever, instead of fighting back and screaming and just being difficult for them to deal with. And the culmination of the lobotomy in this story is also a big part of the arc with this demon that's haunting her, in that that is the final nail in the coffin, quite literally, in that there truly is no escape and there is no hope for her. That now that her, even her sanity, even her mind, even her ability to be cognizant of the world around her is gone. And now this demon truly owns her, that there is no escape. And that was a reality, is that some lobotomized patients did actually get to go back home to their families because they were easier to deal with, but in most cases it was more so just so that the doctors and the orderlies had an easier time dealing with them, because a lot of times when patients were admitted to insane asylums or bedlam, they didn't want them to come back. They didn't want to deal with them anymore. They just wanted them out of their lives, out of sight, out of mind, sort of things. So that is an important detail to remember when reading this story, that these are unfortunately the people that got literally thrown away. Last but not least, a lot of people ask me, why do I write these really scary, dark stories when I myself do not like watching horror films? It's very difficult for me to see scary things, to experience scary things. And the answer is because it's very cathartic for me. A big part of the reason why I don't watch horror and why I just do not gravitate toward scary media is because I already experienced so much scary in my life due to that. I suffer from chronic nightmares and I suffer from mental illness, and I've just experienced some very unexplainable, very scary things in my life, and writing and art is a way for me to get that out of my brain and put it somewhere productive. So it's a cathartic experience for me. It's a way to put the nightmares outside of my head and put them into reality, and honestly, for me to be able to make peace with them. So that's a big part of the reason why there's this disconnect between why do you contribute to this genre but you don't participate in this genre. That's why. So I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, please do give it a like, and if you're new, please subscribe, and I will see y'all next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.